Hello, hello. Welcome to the Wellness on Purpose podcast, where our intention is to provide you with impactful, educational, and realistic information to help you progress on your journey to live wellness on purpose now and for future generations. This podcast shares insights to current health trends with industry and brand leaders in the health and wellness world. This podcast is brought to you by Joanne's Place Health Foods from Peterborough and Lindsay, Ontario. My name is Marissa Lachlan. I'm a holistic nutritionist and functional lab practitioner. I've been working alongside Joanne's Place for the last 8 years, and I'm so excited to continue to be your host for this podcast. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Wellness on Purpose podcast, where we explore all things related to health, wellness, and living your absolute best life now and for future generations. Today, we have a very special episode dedicated to our pregnant women and breastfeeding mamas out there. Some of you might not know this, but Health Canada has some really strict regulations around safe supplementation for pregnant women and breastfeeding women. And that's because they aren't typically a demographic that are used in product efficacy trials and studies for the obvious reasons. However, we have a guest that's joining us today to actually talk about herbal remedies and rituals that are in fact safe during pregnancy and breastfeeding. And we really thought it was important to highlight this conversation as we are about to head into the cold and flu season. We know lots of you mamas are coming in looking for those remedies and what is actually safe during this time for you. And don't worry, we've got your back in this episode and also in our Joanne's Place locations. Before we get into the details of what you need to have on hand, please join me in welcoming back today's guest onto the podcast, Dr. Owen Wiseman, who is here on behalf of A.Vogel. Hello, Owen. It's been some time since we've had you on the podcast, but I'm really happy to have you back today because we're going to be talking about a really important topic for our Joanne's Place and our podcast community, and that is about pregnancy and breastfeeding, and for our mamas out there who are about to roll through the cold and flu season. Now, before we get into those details, I want to rebuild that trust with our listeners. Some people probably have heard you on our podcast before, but there's a lot of new listeners. And also, we're talking about a very specific women's to pregnancy to breastfeeding conversation today. But you're a naturopathic doctor, you work in family care and medicine, and you have a lot of expertise in this area. So let's start by telling our listeners a little bit about yourself as a naturopathic doctor and, a little bit about your practice.
Yeah, thanks, Marcia. It's always so lovely to come back to the Joanne's Place community as well. And I'm really excited to be chatting with everyone today. I am a practicing ND in the Ottawa location. I do work across Ontario as well, but I've got a real keen interest in working with brain health, especially in healthy aging. And that's across the spectrum of aging, because I do find in Canada, we kind of get to 65. And then what people do is just, oh, you're old. We'll put you on a blood pressure medication, a diabetes medication, and we'll call it a day. But there are so many ways that we can age in a very, very healthy way, that we can be active and engaged, especially as we continue to get older. And that starts with the decisions that we make today. And when we're in our 30s, we're looking at bone density, we're looking at fertility, we're looking at a number of different aspects. So it's something that I get to work with the fertility community a lot. And, we have a big conversation about how do we support moms and families. So that's one thing in my practice I work a lot on is fertility and working across the age gap. Now, the other thing is I'm a very, very big proponent of connecting yourself with nature, whether that's nature indoors. Maybe you have an apartment without a balcony and your nature is some houseplants. That's a-okay. Or maybe to you, nature is going out in some of our provincial parks and really immersing yourself. So that's a big thing that I do in my practice. And it's something that is very, very close to my heart as well, as how do we reconnect people with the nature around us.
Amazing. I love that. And I actually thought about you this morning because I knew we were going on this podcast. And I remember the last time we talked about, we were talking about back to school health, and we were talking about natures and getting outdoors and things. And I was just sitting, drinking my coffee. The sun was rising, the leaves were falling, and I was just taking a moment and I just reconnected to our last episode, and it made me really excited to chat more with you today and speak to a very large portion of our audience. And that is, as I said, the moms out there. So the moms, whether you're pregnant or you have children, and we're gonna, talk a little bit about some products and some lifestyle habits, but I also want to start with some transparency here for our listeners. Pregnancy, motherhood, it's not necessarily something that I personally have experienced myself. I don't have any children. However, this is a very large population, as I said, for our listeners and our customer base. And I see someone come in every single day, either they have children and they're getting what everybody else is having at daycare or at school. Or they are also trying to be in a preventative mindset so that they are nice and strong and healthy. But when it comes to women who are pregnant or women who are breastfeeding, there's a lot of concern about what you can take, what you can't take, what you can do. And we're going to talk about that today. But first, I want to start with the basics. Let's talk about the
Mm.
immune system. When a woman is pregnant or is breastfeeding, are their immune systems changing, or does it stay the same the entire time? Can you start by touching on what that looks like through that transitional phase of a woman's life?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, it's probably no surprise to any of our listeners, right? That the immune system is always changing. It's always accommodating. There's always cancer cells that are getting destroyed. There's always viruses that are getting destroyed, bacteria that we're fighting against. So we're always under assault. The nice thing is, day to day, as we continue to wake up, we are winning those battles, and so that's the big thing that we have to remember is the immune system is this incredible, dynamic, living thing that is constantly adapting to the environment around us, constantly adapting to what we put in our body. We'll chat about that a bit later. So during pregnancy, yeah, absolutely. An individual's immune system undergoes very unique changes to really protect both the mother and the developing fetus. Because the main thing is now you've got this new life in your body, and the immune system becomes a lot more tolerant to prevent the mother's body from rejecting the embryo, which can be genetically different. So the main thing is we need to make sure that the body is accepting of it and that tolerance is maintained to some extent during breastfeeding. However, it's really important to note that these adaptations may make pregnant breastfeeding women more susceptible to certain infections. So that is why immune health remains so crucial throughout. And because we know that we can pass things through the placental system, we need to really be on guard for those 9 months to prevent anything from going to our developing embryo. And that's how you really can help to protect yourself against certain conditions, certain diseases, certain viruses or different conditions when that baby enters the world.
Absolutely. As you said, everything from mom is passed to baby to fetus and through those stages as well. So very important to maintain that healthy immune system for baby, but also so that women can, keep their energy levels up, keep the day-to-day things, all the things that we don't want to have to put on the back burner because we're sick. So very, very important. Now, when it comes to strengthening a mother's immune system, there is a big barrier we see in terms of regulation, as I mentioned, on, what you can take, what you can't take, what's safe, things like that.
Mhm.
And a lot of people may not necessarily put this together, but these warnings that we see on so many products, supplements, superfoods, even some food specific products, they typically are avoid or consult with your doctor if pregnant or breastfeeding. Why are we seeing these claims on so many products, as I said, from supplements all the way to some superfood labels?
Yeah, we could come up with all kinds of different things. At its core, liability, right? We need to make sure that we are having a conversation with our healthcare provider because there is kind of the logical fallacy out there that natural is safe, period. It's not even a conversation. And we know that that's not exactly true, right? A lot of these supplements, a lot of the different foods, we do want to have a conversation because nowadays, especially again in our aging population, we know that a lot of people are on different medications. We all exist in this world where we're really just trying to do the best thing we can, not only for ourselves, but for that new life that we're helping to develop inside of us. So the avoid taking it during pregnancy and breastfeeding. the body becomes a little more sensitive to what is ingested. And we know, as we just said, those substances can cross the placenta or transfer into breast milk. And most of the time it's not actually a true safety concern in the sense of we have good data that this is not safe for you. We do have that data for some. Most of the time, it's actually the opposite. It's that we don't have enough data that it is safe for you. So it's really essential that you're working with a well-educated healthcare provider, a holistic nutritionist, a naturopathic doctor, to determine what is the best thing that we can put in the body and how's it going to interact with a lot of our other products that we're taking right now. Because maybe I'm on my prenatal, maybe I'm on just a folic acid drop, and I need to make sure, are those going to interact with other things? So, avoid having it. You have that conversation with your healthcare provider, and the way it works with different products is that you're applying for that natural product number based on a number of different data inputs that Health Canada will determine what claims can you put on your product. So one of the other big things we're looking at is what information do we have based on that natural product number application? And so the benefit there is you can have that conversation with the healthcare provider. So where it may say this product is only safe for children 2 and older. Well, is it only safe for children 2 and older, or can younger individuals actually consume it? And that's where you can have that conversation with the healthcare provider. And I will say it's a conversation I have every single day that I am in my clinical practice, because you have moms, again, that just they want to do the right thing. And so I really want to take this product. I think it's exciting, but it says that I can only take it if I'm, 18 plus or whatever. We can have that conversation.
Yeah, I think it's really important to be talking to some professional at some capacity, because the other thing, like as you said, for liability, there's a lot of the data points that we're talking about in terms of that NPM. There's also a lot of like clinical research that goes around in ingredients. And when we talk about that type of clinical research, they're not, gathering pregnant women to test the products on, because who is volunteering themselves to do that? That's another big piece of the puzzle, is that, you know, different ingredients aren't going through trials to say this
Exactly.
worked or didn't work. We're not putting our moms out there that are pregnant or breastfeeding to test these products. We're looking at other data points. So I think it's important to know. But when you're working with a trusted professional, they've either experienced this with other clients or patients, or they have a little bit more understanding of what that clinical research looks like, what works, what doesn't work with other medications. So super important to be speaking to somebody, as you said, naturopath, nutritionist, midwife, doula, whomever that might be
Mhm.
in your circle during that time. So to kind of piggyback off the labeling, the testing of products for pregnancy, breastfeeding moms, I really want to highlight A.Vogel, because this line is very unique to the industry, because they actually do have a little bit more information and certifications backing their product for pregnancy and breastfeeding women. So some of our listeners might be familiar. I mean, if you've talked to me or come into Joanne's place and you say, I'm pregnant or I'm breastfeeding, we go right to this line, because there is some backing behind it. So before we talk about what those products are, can you share with our listeners about A.Vogel as a brand, as the whole, who they are, where are they from, how long have they been in the industry, because it's been a long time, and what they have to offer to our community?
Absolutely, yeah. So for everyone to know, I am also the medical advisor to A.Vogel, so I oversee kind of all of the education across Canada, hence being on here. But A.Vogel is a Swiss-based company that's really known for its commitment to natural health and herbal remedies. The brand was actually founded in 1923 by our founder Alfred Vogel, hence A.Vogel, and he was kind of a Swiss pioneer of phytotherapy, so plant-based therapy or plant-based medicine. And he really understood from an early age that plants have this beautiful healing properties. And what we usually do is we'll find a plant, and in terms of turning it into a pharmaceutical, we're trying to extract that one active compound. But for those of us in the wellness community and in the natural health community, we understand that it's actually the interaction between a lot of different compounds that is yielding that really, really powerful health benefit. So A.Vogel's been this leader in the industry for 100 years. It's actually our 100-year anniversary this year, 1923 to 2023. And so we've had a lot of time to understand what makes plant-based medicine work. We do a ton of research and development, because one thing that may shock listeners to find out, because it definitely shocked me when I had the opportunity to visit Switzerland in July of 2023, we actually found out that they are covered by the public health insurance over in Switzerland, which blows my mind because of the contrast with what's going on in Canada right now with our natural health product industry. So I had gone into a pharmacy, because when I heard that, I went, no way. And so I had gone into a pharmacy. I actually still have the individual's card with me in my bag. I carried around as a reminder. And our cold and flu products and a number of our other products were actually behind the counter. And so I went into this pharmacy and I introduced myself. I said, I'm Dr. Owen. I'm visiting from Canada. I'm with A.Vogel. And I said, I would love to see the product behind the counter. And first thing, you could see she was a little skeptical. And she said, well, do you have a prescription? I went, no, but I would still love to see it. And she said, absolutely not. And then I said, no problem. I respect that. Do you mind if I take a picture? And she just said flat, no. And I kind of walked out afterwards, and I was thinking, you know what? How bold of you, where you wouldn't do that if you went to a Shoppers Drug Mart and took pictures of all the medications behind the counter as the pharmacists are putting them together. So, silly on my part to kind of think just because it's a natural health product doesn't mean it's treated any different over there. So doctors and pharmacists can actually prescribe a lot of our products, and they are covered. And it's great because we are considered to be a pharmaceutical brand over in Switzerland, right? But especially in North America, we go, oh, pharmaceutical, only drugs, only super powerful synthetics. But over in Switzerland, it's not like that. And because of that, what's really nice is we have all of this clinical data, because being partially federally funded, we are obligated, right, to do research and development, which is why I really like the brand as a whole, because now what's great is you've got very well studied products. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of transparency there, because you can go in, you can read the data, you can understand the data as well. And, the big things that make the company a bit different is we're only using fresh plant matter, which we know is more bioactive in the body, because when you dry it, when you freeze dry it, you lose a lot of those really, really powerful compounds. And the way I always compare it when I'm training is, if you're making a stew, even downstairs, I've got a nice butternut squash soup cooking right now, or simmering. And the difference between using a fresh sage leaf, let's say, versus using a dried sage leaf is palpable. I mean, you can taste the difference. So it's no different from what we want from our supplements and our natural health products as well. We need to demand some really high quality evidence, because there's a lot of people who want to make a quick buck off of you. And you need to know that it has been clinically backed, and it's not just this third party seller trying to make a quick buck off Amazon or something like that.
So many things to touch on there. First, like the Swiss just do it so much better than us. But
Yeah.
then you think about that, where it's like, well, you think about Canada right now, and what we're going through with our natural health products, which is terrifying, the unknown, frustrating. And then you go to the Swiss, where you're like, they've got it all figured out here. And then they're like, but you can't just grab this off the shelf. You need to have this like prescribed. So it's so interesting, just like how that is. It's so different. But I will say, the Swiss definitely, they know what they're doing over there, hence A.Vogel as a whole. um But yeah, it's like so many benefits. There's so many formulas, so many things we could talk about, but specifically, we're going to come back to that pregnancy, breastfeeding moms, because as I mentioned quickly, A.Vogel has a little bit more backing behind their products
Mhm.
for this specific topic. So I want to talk about specific products of A.Vogel for both acute and chronic cold flu conditions and what formulations you recommend, when, where, and yeah, just kind of like what your professional recommendations would be for our listeners.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not I use a lot of different products myself. I recommend a lot of different products to patients, but the big thing like you've highlighted is we're specifically looking at pregnancy safe and nursing safe. And that is where our window of natural health products really does narrow quite significantly. And this is something that is very close to my heart. My mother was sick when she had my sister, and that had led to some things. And I always look back and I think, wow, just imagine if I had known about this or she had known about this all that time ago. Would that have made any large difference? And a big part of that is because we have that clinical research. So on our cold and flu line alone, we have 34 clinical trials. There are a couple in the works right now. That ranges from in vitro, which is kind of our petri dish studies, where we get to say, oh, that's kind of neat. I wonder how that would perform in humans. And then we get to take that info all the way up to randomized double-blind placebo-controlled trials, which is kind of the creme de la creme in the research world. And one of the big things is we are making sure that those are safe in humans. So we have 10 human clinical trials on our cold and flu products. And the beauty of that is that now we have this big database of about 2,300 people that we can really pull a lot of really significant interactions and data and safety info from, and then apply that. So our cold and flu line is safe for pregnant and nursing, and that's a large part of what we need to protect ourselves with, especially in that really delicate first trimester. And it's one thing where we often always talk about treatment. It's how our society as a whole really functions is, oh, I feel this now. I'm going to take something to bring that down. But I'm a huge proponent of prevention. And when I'm talking to patients, I mean, right or wrong, I kind of compare their bodies to a car. I said, if your car is breaking down and you're leasing your vehicle, then you can just bring it back, get the new one. You're not worried about, windshield crack or the funny rattling that's going on in the engine. But think about that if you own your car and you're not leasing it. Now, all of a sudden, that rattle could be $150 to fix. But if you wait until it's really, really damaging, well, now that 1,500, that repair has become $1,500 instead of 150. And we don't treat our bodies better than a vehicle. I mean, we wait until something's really wrong before we interact. So that's where I highlight pregnancy and breastfeeding safe options like the A.Vogel Force, because you can take it preventatively. We have the largest human clinical trial on echinacea. It's 755 adults. They took it every single day for 4 months. So we know it's safe. And what I'll usually say to my moms is take it throughout cold and flu season. We know that this kind of triple demic, especially in Ontario and across Canada, of RSV and the new COVID variant and influenza, it is coming, right? Influenza numbers are starting to pick up. We're seeing wastewater data for the viruses starting to pick up. So now is the time when you need to protect yourself and you need to choose something that's safe. And I always really like going into a store like Joanne's Place because you can pick up a couple of different echinaceas. And what you'll notice on a lot of them, it says traditionally used in herbal medicine for X, Y, and Z. But the difference is when you pick up a Vogel's echinophores and you turn the packaging, it says clinically shown to X, Y, and Z. So that is a very specific language choice from Health Canada because we have the clinical data. And the research on our products has been done on our products. So we've had situations in the past where different companies have borrowed research, but the research is not done on just general echinacea. It's done on our products. Again, remember, we're federally funded partially for our research over in Switzerland. So there has to be good data on our products to continue to maintain that license and that information. So that is why we need to choose something safe for you.
Absolutely. So that was the product that you mentioned was the Echinoforce, and that can be taken preventatively and while sick, correct?
Exactly, yes.
Amazing. And then my personal favorite product from the A.Vogel is the hot and cold drink.
Oh,
I am addicted to that product. Like it's like the first little crisp morning. I'm like, oh, let's make a cup of warm
let's
hot
get it.
beverage. I love that product so much. I do use it preventatively a couple times during the week, but I find when I'm sick, like I crave that so much. And I feel like it works to shorten the duration of whatever sickness I have, even if I'm just feeling like a little bit stuffy, not even like a full blown cold or anything. But that is like my number one go to product. And I also want to mention to our listeners another really important thing that I want to bring awareness to is the affordability of the A.Vogel
Mm,
products because we know right now this is a very big conversation. Rising prices of so many products, supplement, food, services. But that is another really, I think, pivotal piece of A.Vogel is all of their products are very affordable. We see products that have gone $10, $15 in price increase, and we have not seen that in A.Vogel. And I think it's really important to also mention that as well.
yeah, and I think touching on that, it goes back to Alfred Vogel's principles. He really focused back in the 20s, the 30s, the 40s when he was going around and he was seeing his own patients. He really did focus on how do I bring healthcare to as many Swiss people and then the world, because now we're across 30 different countries. How do I bring that healing to as many people as I can? And if you price it out, then it doesn't become accessible. And it was funny because his business team, he actually didn't want to go into product development or well, he enjoyed the herbs and everything, but they said, Alfred, we've got to sell this as a business. You do have to make money. But his philosophy was we don't have to make that much money. Right. And it's a very almost North American idea. We have to make as much as we can and squeeze people as much as we can, but that doesn't help people. So a lot of our products are kind of under that $20 price point. And I know for myself, I'm quite biased towards the hot drink as well. I really like the versatility of it. So oftentimes for the little people in my life, I will make popsicles. I'll add a little bit of honey from our local beekeeper. They make a phenomenal raspberry honey. And so I'll add a little bit of honey. You can grate some ginger root. And I always joke it's like sneaking vegetables into the kids' diet. And that's the versatility of the hot drink. I make a really nice holiday mocktail or cocktail, and that way you can serve it and get some of the health benefits there as well. And then the big thing with the hot drink, it's gone head to head with Tamiflu, which is actually an anti-influenza medication that is typically prescribed, especially here in Canada. So you have this really powerful, versatile drink almost, and it has gone head to head with a pharmaceutical for treating influenza and was just as effective. So we've got this amazing product sitting on our shelf, and the price point, I mean, it's less than 25 bucks. So it's to me just a no-brainer.
Absolutely. And you can take both those products together, the
You can.
Eka Force, like you can take that, all throughout. And then if you are feeling like you warm that warm beverage, you can take that as well.
Absolutely.
Amazing. So reassuring to hear. And as we have been talking about those two products and the A.Vogel cold and flu line, they are safe for our mamas out there, pregnancy, breastfeeding. There's a little logo on the back, and it's
Mhm.
just that extra reassurance for the moms out there. So I want to talk a little bit more in terms of other lifestyle factors that we can support pregnancy and breastfeeding moms too. So let's kind of turn the table and start with some lifestyle factors. Do you have any recommendations for helping to maintain that nice and strong immune system?
Absolutely. I mean, look, I kind of mentioned it earlier. I'm a big fan and quite biased towards encouraging people to reconnect with the land around them and with the environment around them. But it's not just because I'm saying go hug a tree, you'll feel good after. You will feel good. I'll just say that. There's things in the tree called phytoncides. These are the oils. So when you walk into a forest, especially after rain, and you smell the scent of the forest, that is the phytoncides. And we know that they actually have immune benefits. There was a really phenomenal study, and people who walked through a forest for about an hour to 2 hours, they actually boosted and supported their immune system for a whole week after. For 7 days, their immune system was more robust after that walk in the woods. So right away, I go, okay, lifestyle tips, try and prioritize kind of that hike, on a Sunday morning if you've got a lifestyle and a work schedule that allows you to do that. And for our moms and our listeners, it's such a phenomenal bonding experience. We know that when kids are in nature, the research on it is phenomenal. It helps them develop motor skills. It supports their cognitive development. We know kids that are in greener areas do have better emotional processing later in life. We know that they actually have reduced allergies. There's been great data on rural kids versus urban kids, and in terms of allergies, and the rural kids are far less likely to have those chronic allergies because their immune system has learned to tolerate all of the different allergens floating in the air. And then the other big thing is from regreening studies. So what we'll do is we'll take the asphalt of a schoolyard and we'll actually turn it to be green. And we know that those kids, their gut microbiome and their skin microbiome actually becomes more diverse, which helps protect you against a whole bunch of different infections. So very, very much get outdoors, explore with the kids, let them eat the dirt, let them roll around in the mud. It's just clothes, but these are memories and bonding moments that you're going to share with your little ones for decades to come.
I couldn't agree more. And I think it's so supportive. Like I knew you were gonna talk about that for sure. I mean, I know that's part of your philosophy and that we've talked about that before, but um we're coming out of a time where we were scared to go out, scared to have exposure to germs. I still see this in the community here at
Mhm,
Joanne's Place, people coming in. It's starting to transition, but I've been having this conversation specifically with moms actually lately, close friends and, COVID kids or not having exposure during that time. And I just keep reiterating it's free. Like, this is
mhm,
something that's so affordable for everybody. Like, just get outside. And I actually see
mhm,
this in my own niece. Like, she is not a TV person at all. And she was like during COVID baby, but she, like, any chance she can get, she just wants to go outside, and it's so refreshing. And you can just see the difference in her energy levels and her health. Having that mentality and wanting to go outside and having family that takes her outside, obviously. So it's so important. And I was listening to a podcast the other day, totally different topic, but they were talking about it is non-negotiable
mm,
at this point in everyone's life to have exposure outside, whether that's exposure to different temperatures, the sunlight, fresh air. It is a non-negotiable health tool that everybody must have every single day. And they are now doing the further studies on the time of how long you need to have those benefits.
mhm.
And right now, the podcast was talking about like 10 minutes. It's
Yeah.
not an extensive amount of time. So it's accessible for everybody, and it's also obtainable to 10 minutes is all you need at least to be outside.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that's a really important point that you raised, Marissa, where yeah, you read these studies, they're saying an hour, 2 hours, but I'm a big proponent. Any nature time is better than no nature time because when you look at how much time we're spending indoors, I mean, estimates years ago were about 90% of our time indoors, and now it's actually closer to about 97% of our week we're spending indoors. I mean, that is really distressing. So
Yeah.
get in the car, hop on public transit. There's lots of great green spaces. There's lots of great parks, and just let them engage with nature. And even for our adults and our moms, it makes a huge difference. We know that when you spend time in nature, your cortisol comes down. We know that you're more easily able to let go of your worries. You feel more generous. You feel kinder. You feel more connected to your community. So there's literally no downside besides you might get a little chilly if it's cooler. So just put on another jacket or a sweater.
Absolutely. And I know in Canada, I am guilty of this too, the cold temperatures. I'm like, I like the cozy, warm feeling, but I'm really challenging myself this year, like, to not even have the mindset that it's too cold. It's just
Mhm.
training the brain to realize this is a season. It's a good season to adjust your body to, and just embrace it. So if we can give any tips to anybody, just try to embrace that cooler temperature change. It's going to be so beneficial. And I know we talked a lot about pregnancy and breastfeeding of moms today, and that's very applicable for that demographic, but also for everybody else that could be listening to this as well too. So outside, get some fresh air, such a good thing to have, even aside from immunity. We're talking
Go
overall
splash in a
life.
puddle. Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. Let's quickly talk about food, because this is
Yeah.
another big one. I feel like this conversation can be a little bit challenge to have with people right now because of the rising cost of food.
Mm.
But it's still important to bring some awareness to specific foods that can be very supportive for the immune system. So if there's any words of recommendations or specifics that you want to highlight, what would you say for our pregnant moms, breastfeeding moms that would be listening today?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of doing as long as someone has an emotional connection to food in a healthy way, right? And it's not something that we've struggled with in the past. With my patients, I usually do a food analysis. So I get them to track their food for 3 days. I run it through software, and it actually spits out what is this diet providing the body with. And I love that because it's an awareness piece, we don't need to know the calories. Those don't matter. What we're really looking at is how much zinc am I getting from my diet? How much vitamin C am I naturally getting from my diet? And then you can introduce strategic supplementation because for a lot of people, maybe your diet is actually a lot more robust than you think. And maybe you don't need the multivitamin, but also maybe it's not as robust as you think. And you do need that multivitamin. So these are some ways that we get to look at it and really strategize and individualize for that individual. And at the end of the day, I'm a huge fan of those classics, right? We're making sure that we're getting our vitamin C, which is surprisingly in more than oranges. And kiwis actually have some of the highest concentration of vitamin C. And the other big part of kiwis that we don't often consider is yes, you can eat the skin. I do eat the skin. I give it a good wash before, but get a lot of good fiber from the skin as well. So you can do that. And it's odd to switch to if you've never done it before, but you'll get past it, I swear. Just make sure you remove that hard nub off the end of it. And the other big thing is zinc. Zinc is a massive key player, but the problem is when you look at the quantity and the concentration of zinc, and I'll flip this back to you in a second, but um, oysters is the highest concentrated zinc source, and I don't know many people who are sitting there slurping the snotty oysters every single day. It's quite an expensive food. That's why it's at a lot of high-end restaurants. Um, for most of us, it's not accessible, but you know what is? Pumpkin seeds, and a lot of our local kind of bulk providers and bulk food stores, they'll actually provide the pumpkin seeds and you can get it from a lot of local stores as well, like Joanne's Place. So I think it's a great idea because they're really, really high in zinc. And you know what? If your body has a hard time handling the seed itself and the shell itself, no problem. You stick it in a smoothie, you stick it in a blender, you crush it up, you make some powder, and you're still going to get some really good sourcing for that. But I know, Marissa, with you and your background as well, you're probably a really good source to ask here. What do you typically recommend for anyone walking into Joanne's Place?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, definitely the vitamin C and the zinc. And I'm so happy you brought awareness to kiwi because that's actually the number one fruit that I recommend people to have, especially when we're talking about pregnancy, because it's also incredibly supportive for constipation. It's actually
Mm,
a great amount of fiber, good amount of vitamin C, as we said, for immune support. But I find that the more that people consume kiwis, the more regular they are as well, too. So with pregnancy, we know constipation can be a side effect that happens. So definitely kiwis, vitamin C rich food, just think anything with color. And this is the perfect time of year to think about that. As you said, the butternut squash soup that you're
mm,
having, any of those beautiful, vibrant, nutrient dense squashes, acorn squash, we've got the buttercup squash. Those are all amazing sources of vitamin C, good fiber, lots of minerals, so good. And I was also going to suggest the zinc. Nobody I know is eating oysters.
no.
First of all, as you said, expensive. They're also very hard to source. I find, at least in our community.
Mhm,
So seeds is normally what I'm recommending going to. Pumpkin seeds, a couple Brazil nuts,
mhm.
almonds in general, just getting that nice density of the omega fats as well. And then my number one thing, and this is so hard for people to wrap their head around as well, is some liver. Liver is a
Yes.
number one ingredient I also recommend. Not a personal preference for me, but if I can get my clients to, you know, change their look on it, maybe they put it in some type of ground stew or something. That's a really big recommendation I have for the mineral density, protein. Um, so those would be probably my top few food recommendations. We know very supportive for pregnancy and breastfeeding as well. So many amazing things. I mean, we could talk for hours on food, on
Easily.
supplements, on, studies, but I just want to kind of wrap this up and say if you have any final words for our community of pregnant moms or breastfeeding moms out there, anything else that they should know to support their immune health this season.
Yeah, I would say, we've talked a lot about speaking to a licensed healthcare provider, speaking to someone with the education background to have these conversations. And it's easy to say, there's a lot of private insurers out there who are covering naturopathic services, holistic nutritionists. And the big part is if you're someone sitting there going, well, I don't have that coverage, this is why finding a resource like the staff at Joanne's Place is your best friend because at the end of the day, these staff are attending countless webinars throughout every single month, multiple different companies that are coming in and they get to educate on the ingredients and the sourcing. And so if you're looking for a really good place where there's a lot of education, you need to go to your local health food store because these individuals are ready to help you. They want to help you so badly and they're going to give you really well educated recommendations as well. It's not just something that they're kind of picking out. Oh, this was the first one that came to mind without much thought. They are really educated in these decisions. So don't worry if you're sitting there going, I would love some help with my health. That's where you go to somewhere like Joanne's Place and you have that conversation. And then the staff there are often well connected to the community of different healthcare providers, and they can actually help direct you to someone that would be really, really good for your specific and individual situation. So that's what I'd say is you have that resource. Please use it. You can come on these podcasts as well and listen to get some really good, concise information in a very short amount of time, especially something while you're driving. I mean, it's typically when I'm recommending to my podcasts or listening to my podcasts as well. And then lastly, get outdoors, use clinically proven choices like A.Vogel's Echinophores to help protect you this season because the white stuff is coming. It's not quite here yet. We got a little taste of it the other day, but the snow and the winter is coming. It's going to be even more important to protect your health because, as Marissa was saying, it's the cozy season. We're going to be inside when we're gathering with our friends and family. So we need to do even more to protect ourselves from that exposure while we've got a little one growing inside of us.
Absolutely. Such amazing recommendations. Oh, and thank you so much, especially for the shout out for our store. I really appreciate it. I know our team does. And that is something that Joanne's Place definitely prides himself on. We are almost at 50 years in business, and that has been our number one motto since the very beginning is having education for our staff and our leaders to share that passively through our store. So it's definitely something that we are very, very proud of. And we want to make sure our community feels supported, whether they can see a professional like a naturopath, nutritionist, whoever, or not, then just come in and visit our store because we'd love to even just open the conversation and give as much information as we can. So I want to thank you so much for being on our podcast again. It's been a pleasure. And I know our listeners are going to absolutely love this episode and be so grateful for you joining us as well. So thank you so much.
My pleasure, Marissa. Take care, everybody.
If you guys are still here, I want to thank you so much for checking out today's episode. Just setting a friendly reminder that the conversations had on the Wellness on Purpose podcast are for educational purposes only and does not replace any medical advice. If you want further information on the topics or the products spoken about in the episode, please pop into one of our Joanne's Place locations to learn more. And you can also check with your professional healthcare provider before adding in any of these products or recommendations into your daily routine. Thanks again for joining us, and we look forward to catching you in our next one.